Tonight, we take a look consciously, I'm cheating here, at race, faith, gender, and sexual orientation. That's a boatload of deep stuff, don't you think? Kevin Briggs is my guest. He's an artist, a photographer, and has a brand new display that is going to cause a lot of conversation. We learned about him through a previous guest, and we'll tell you that story when we meet him together a little bit later on. Thanks for joining My State of Mind. I am Dan York on this Wednesday evening in the middle of the summer. You see the program now 3 times, 7:30, 11:30 on MyRI TV and on Fox Providence at midnight. Don't forget the radio, weekdays noon to 3 on WPRO. Let's turn to the rundown and check into some of the things that are happening today. I just want to review the market today, but I'm not going to actually say what it did because I learned my lesson. Here's the headline for today, sure, and here's at our press time for production of the show what CBS had to say about the volatility.
The Dow Jones opened higher Wednesday morning, gaining 400 points in the opening minutes as bargain hunters scooped up deals. The Dow was up more than 300 points most of Tuesday, but it fizzled just before the close and ended down more than 200 points. The Dow has lost more than 10% in the past 6 trading days, dropping about 1,900 points. China's main index lost another 1% overnight. China is the world's second largest economy and the main driver of global growth over the past decade. But traders are braced for more wild swings in the days and weeks ahead.
And so am I, because if you watch the show on an every night basis, and I'm thankful that you do, you'll know that I missed it by the broadside of the barn last night when I said something else about the volatility of the market and that at least it was a couple hundred points up. We have, don't tell anybody, just between you and me, we produce the show in the late afternoon, about 4 o'clock. We have a pre-production session around 3:45. I stopped looking at the market around 3:45. Between 3:45 and 4 o'clock, it dropped like 300-400 points. And so rather than being a couple hundred points up, it was almost a couple hundred points down. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to stop checking, and I don't even trust my iPhone. But if I did trust my iPhone, it's up like, 500 or 600 points. But I told you I wasn't going to get into that. Just hold on to your hat and stay steady. This will correct itself over time. On a much different note, I don't know that I could even smile. It's you want to be in the television business today, you're going to have to take a deep breath because a lot of people are just solemn, no doubt. The headline of the Roanoke Times and the CBS review of this horrifying tragedy.
A reporter and a camera operator for CBS affiliate WDBJ-TV were gunned down live on the air. Reporter Allison Parker and photographer Adam Ward were killed. Jeff Marks is the station's general manager.
We heard screaming, and then we heard nothing.
The camera kept rolling as it fell to the ground and captured a glimpse of the gunman, identified as Vester Flanagan. A short time later, police surrounded a car on a Virginia freeway, where they say Flanagan shot himself.
It just breaks your heart, and you think of the families and so many friends and co-workers who were impacted by what happened today.
The woman being interviewed, the head of the local Chamber of Commerce, was also shot in the back and is being treated.
I don't know what to say about this except for a couple of things. Obviously, the victims went through a horrifying last few moments of their life, lives cut way too short. What a cliche, right? Viewers who are watching this eating their morning cereal must have just been horrified. The anchors must have been horrified, directors, producers, on a live television basis. But here's the thing, I did hear a lot of commentary on the cable networks today about the courage of television reporters. And while that is true in certain circumstances, I think we got to get a little bit careful about this. This is a domestic workplace. This is a workplace violence. Domestic is the wrong word, but homegrown office violence issue. This is a fellow former employee. That it happened live on television to a television crew hyperbolizes the entire horror for the television news industry. Does that make any sense to you? No less tragic, no less newsworthy, but some perspective. God bless him. It's awful. Trump date. This is what I'm calling, I think you're just going to see this all the time. It's just a Trump update. It's my own creation. That's why I get the big bucks. CNN.com headline. Yeah, so Jorge Ramos got a little bit of his own cocky medicine running into a Trump event in Iowa. Check this out.
Donald Trump has added another journalist to his line of fire. This time it's Univision anchor Jorge Ramos.
Sit down. Go ahead.
I have the right to ask the question.
No, you don't. You haven't been called.
I have the right to ask the question.
Go back to Univision.
Trump says Ramos started questioning him without being called upon.
He just stands up and starts screaming. So, you know, maybe he's at fault also.
I've been a journalist for more than 30 years. I've been all over the world, and I've never been thrown out of any press conference from any interview. This is not Cuba or Venezuela.
This is not Trump's first run-in with Univision. He's suing the network because it pulled out of a contract to air Trump's Miss America pageant after making controversial remarks about immigration.
You know, Jorge Ramos is an activist journalist, and he's got a huge constituency that loves to see his activist journalism. Donald Trump has got a problem with Univision, as previously described, but he thinks during the event, says, you know, maybe I ought to make good with this guy. So he brings him back in, and there's a 5-minute back and forth, and Ramos thinks he can dominate the discussion, which is absolute stupidity, because he's standing on the floor, Trump's got the podium, and Trump continues in with his, you know, abridged version of how he's going to end up sending 11 million illegal aliens, undocumented citizens, depending on your perspective, back. The whole thing was completely non-functional. But, you know, it's just another day in the life of Trump, who's at 35% now in New Hampshire with Republicans. That would be triple the next competitor. Hey, I saw this in the paper today and on WPRI.com. All these people showed up at a forum in Providence at the Dueling Pianos place. This is all about whether McCoy Stadium should be left and that beautiful stadium be built at that not used land site at 195. What struck me most is not the same old arguments back and forth, but that Patty Doyle, spokesperson for the Paw Sox, says that she wants, and the team wants, the public to know what the new ask and offer is from the Paw Sox. That's nice to know. Reportedly, it happened back in June that they finalized what it is that they would now offer to the city and the state. And the Speaker of the House is sitting on it. So you should tell the Speaker of the House, cough up the data. Stop sitting on it, because we are trying to run a transparent operation here, right? And finally, this guy never learns. Headline for Kurt Schilling, you know, the bloody sock. Now that whole image was bloodied by the $75 million loss with 38 studios. But then the poor guy, who's been up and down with ESPN anyway, ends up getting suspended because he put out some tweet that we're not going to put up that talks about comparing Muslim populations with Nazi populations, and it just never stops with this guy. He has a problem remembering who he works for. At best, right now, he's working as a Little League analyst for ESPN. He did some Major League stuff too. But you'd think he would think that he knows that ESPN, who can be very political, or which can be very political, doesn't like too much controversy. Politically correct is okay. Do you follow? Schilling doesn't, dummy. All right, let us, your state of mind is important to us. 228-1886, email me at stateofmind@iritv.com. Facebook post, you know how this thing works. Here's another Facebook post, kicking back some feedback on a previous show. So the counselor knows what the mayor did wrong, and the mayor's actions are the most scandalous of any recent story. But rather than take actions to remove the mayor, the motivations are geared only to prevent the Democrats from taking over control of the city. Politics over the right thing does not serve the citizens. It serves the politicians, and that's disappointing. Well, that's about Don Botts, the Cranston City Councilor, who was here explaining that while he really thought he would vote no confidence on Cranston Mayor Alan Fung over the state police report and the Ticketgate scandal and all that, he decided that, you know what, the politics aren't right, because if he goes, a Democrat will be in control, and because he's a Republican, he doesn't think that should happen. And all I can say to our Facebook poster, David, is amen. All right, we're going to get very conscientious when we come back. Stay with us. So as I told you at the top of the show, we got a referral, and that happens a lot here on the program. Guests come from all sorts of reasons. You can let us know who you think ought to be a guest. Maybe you want to be a guest on the program. But Stephen Alexander, pictured here, said we should have the guy who took this photo. And I thought, does Stephen actually want that photo on the television? Because there he is pictured with the word freak. Stephen, as you know, is transgendered. Oh, you don't know that? He's a local guy who has gone through a transgendered process and has been a guest a handful of times in this program. Most recently to talk about, what's her name? Caitlyn Jenner. There you go. Just a mind spasm there. But he said, you got to talk to this artist because he's phenomenal. So I said, sure. And we bring Kevin Briggs in. Kev, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you.
It's great to have you. You have other photos that I'm looking at one right now, and under the same format, pictures are taken of individuals, and then words are used to describe what?
Well, what I did was I wanted to use the labels that are typically cast on certain types of people in our society. And I took 4 different categories: race, faith, gender, and sexual orientation. And I focused on the groups that are pretty much targeted on a daily basis within our society and globally. And so for Stephen was one of the first people I photographed, and I found him through the Providence Journal. And he was just a perfect candidate for sexual orientation, given that he's going through the transgender process.
Right. You are a Cranston kid living in Providence right now?
I'm a Providence kid living in Cranston.
Yeah, see, I can't get anything right. It's one of those days where I can't get anything right.
That's all right.
But I'll put this up, I'll put it up a couple of times. Can we show everybody when and where this art display will be seen? Actually, now through September 26th, at the Gallery 7 in Maynard. How far up is Maynard?
It's about 1 hour from here,
okay,
off of Route 495.
Now, has this been your profession or your hobby, or what is it?
Financial services is my profession. Photography is my hobby.
Okay. What moved you to get into this consciousness?
Well, I think it was just some events that that happened to me during my life, and I realized that, despite my successes, my education, etc., sometimes this is how people view me within work environment, within society in general. And I had a couple of negative experiences, and I went into the studio one day and put this together and took the photograph, and my mentor had said, Nick Johnson, you should try and branch this out and grow with it. So I wrote some things down, and it was a pretty cathartic experience, because as I'm going through it and looking at the different groups, I wanted to select the groups that are frequently targeted in our society. And as I'm looking at it, I wanted to look at, well, what are my prejudices towards these groups? Do I have any? What level are they? 0 to 10? Do I fall at a 10 being the worst, or 0 being non-existent, which I don't think anybody has a 0 level of prejudice, but I think we're inherently, they say we're inherently have some sort of bias. So from there, I went to sexual orientation, then I looked at the different races and faith. I went with the 2 faiths that are in our news on a daily basis. Jewish and Islam. And so I took those photographs, and then I went through the rest.
Yeah, it's a really interesting exercise, and frankly, it's very uncomfortable to look at in a way, because there are words that are used. So you have a picture of you here. Can we put, Steve, can you put Stephen's picture back up, if you have that handy? I'm hoping that every word on there is I'm sure that's already mentioned. So freak, man in a dress, she-male, he-male, bathroom bill, tranny, da-da-da. These are, in that particular case, and in the format of everything that you've done here, you're using words that people have used.
Correct. I'm using words that are region-specific, generational, and also used on a global perspective. So I did a lot of research. I talked to a lot of the different subjects that I photographed, and I had them look at each of the words and tell me, have these words been used towards you? And in many cases, yes. And there were some words that some folks didn't know, but if you asked someone of a different generation, it was a word that they had used or had heard at some point in time.
Right. That happens a lot. You can be hanging out with your grandparents or somebody's grandparents, and they say something referencing gender, race, ethnicity, and you look at them and say, what did you say?
Exactly.
So some of that's in the picture.
Exactly. You know, when I look at the subjects that I use, they range from as young as 22 to as old as 70. And you got several different generations there. And some of the words that the gentleman that I photographed for Jewish, that was 70, he didn't recognize some of those words. But he said some of his family members might, and the family members before him might as well.
So I'm looking at yours, and the N-word is in front, and because we're hypersensitive about the N-word now, we're not putting it on television. But there's Uncle Tom, and there's menace, and uneducated, and misunderstood, it's interesting, and threat, and militant, and ignorant, and stupid is labeled across your forehead.
What I try to do is the most offensive word for each of the categories I brand it across the person's chest, because that's typically how that person may be identified or labeled.
But the N-word, which is across your chest in this particular picture, you'll have to check the website. Is there a website with
there is a website. The gallery's website has this photo and about 4 others, and my website will as well.
So you'll take a look at the website, and you can determine for yourself how you feel about all this, and it's all up there in that thing right now. But the use of the N-word is so controversial. You use it as one of the worst, and I would agree. The big controversy, though, amongst everybody is that African Americans use it on an all too often basis, and so that's a whole nother conversation, right?
It is, and I'll gladly come back and talk to you about that. But I'm
give me
offended.
the Cliff Notes. Do you find it problematic?
I'm offended by the word, yes. And when I talk to folks, my peers, they say the same thing. Some don't, but many do.
Okay.
Because it's a derivative of the word, the real word with the ER spelling.
But it's, in as much as intra, I don't like to divide here, but intra, the white culture, whatever the hell that is, and black culture, there are generational problems that exist.
Correct.
So that's a generational problem, isn't it?
It is.
It's kind of a media culture problem and generational problem that African American America needs to address. Yes.
Agree.
All right. Yeah. But let's not get distracted, though, because that word aside, there's a lot of meaning to this, and I want to come back and ask our artist what he wants you to think about this. Stay with us. Welcome back. Kevin Briggs is a local guy who's in the financial world, but his true love is photography, one of those things, and has an exhibit that is ongoing now up in Maynard, Mass. We'll show it to you at the end of the broadcast one more time, and a website where you can take a look at some of these pieces of work where he takes photos of individuals and then labels them. Can we show Stephen one more time, just as an example? There's Stephen Alexander, who we've had on the program before, who is successfully transgendering, so to speak, and these are some of the words that would be attributed to what he's doing, and it's researched, and it's a whole I'll tell you, this is I'm moved by this because it's a mirror.
Yeah, it is. And
it's a mirror on everybody.
Right.
One could think it's just whatever, anybody could do. It's yes.
I haven't seen one person look at the photograph or any of the photographs in the exhibit and not have something to say. Everybody said it's
like ouch.
Ouch, provocative, powerful, moving, upsetting, disturbing, bothersome. And a couple people have come to tears, not just at my photo, but others, because I think everybody knows someone or identifies themselves in each one of those categories. You know, faith, race, gender, and sexual orientation.
It's also educational, because there, amongst the words planted over Kevin's own picture is the word Monday. And I asked you during the break.
Yeah.
What
is it, right?
What is it?
A comedian apparently uses the word to describe blacks who like to call out of work on Mondays, and said, we'll call them Monday when they don't want to show up to work. So I'm paraphrasing, but that's where the term originated from.
I think this display of artwork can cause a lot of conversation. Is that what you're trying to do? What's your motive?
The motive is it's a conscious look, and I'm hoping folks will look at the photos, look inside themselves, and see, have I used these terms? Where do I rate? What's my level of bias, prejudice, etc.? But I'm just hoping it'll spark some conversation. Maybe not within a group of people, but within yourself. And that's what I hope.
There are words, as I'm looking at this particular picture of you, that I've heard people use. The derogatory terms are words that I never use. Well,
I think we're all guilty.
Negro is one of them. I mean, that's historical.
That's historical.
You know, that changed with time.
It's generational as well.
But there's a word like uneducated, and you have stupid planted across your forehead.
Yeah.
I don't. Maybe I've passed some kind of progress test, because when I look at that, I think, oh no,
right.
no. But you know, I'm just one guy, and I'm not perfect either. I'm not saying that
exactly.
I'm culturally perfect, but I go, really?
Yeah.
So not only, oh boy, I do think that way. I got to think about that. I got to check my conscience. In some ways, what you're doing, because you research these words, you're informing me about things that are still said about certain people that I don't even. Right?
You may not think or may not say.
Right.
Right. And that's basically what it is. Yeah. I mean, the words that I said to you in the break, each of these words I've been called at some time or another throughout my life. I'm 45 years old, so there's been some periods of my life where I've been called these words up until today. And the same for other folks in the exhibit. And so when I put this together, it was a very cathartic experience because I'm not perfect. And I look back to in my 20s and 30s, et cetera, what words did I use? Where was my level of bias? Was it high? Was it low? Was it in the average, in the middle? I like to keep it all down at about a 2 or 3, which is as low as I can get it. You know?
Okay, so you're not ridiculously.
I'm not perfect.
Oh no, and you're also not living in some kind of idealistic place where you think all of it's going to go away.
Life's not utopia.
Because differences are still important, aren't they?
They are, but you have to learn to understand these differences, and that's what I think this will help to do. At least I hope.
All right. So far, the feedback has been pretty good.
Very, very positive. Very, very positive. Yeah. It's on Facebook.
What have you learned about? What have you learned about what people have seen that you may not have even thought you were bringing out?
Good question. I think I learned that people will talk about it, maybe not in a group, but they will talk about it. And so when I was at the exhibit, I learned that some folks said that one person in general said, I said, do you identify with any of the groups in here? And she said, I identify as a human with all the groups. And I was surprised and shocked that, you know, people are more aware than I realize and that others realize, but people don't want to talk about it, and that's what's been a problem in this country and in other places around the world.
Are you getting any national attention for this yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Because it's a good project.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And I hope people take a look at it, either online or in Poison at Gallery 7 in Maynard, Mass, now through September 26th. And come by and say hello to them from 7 to 10 on the 12th. We'll have you back. There's more conversation.
That'd be great.
On this,
Thanks.
right?
I'd love to come back.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Final word when we come back. Stay with us. On a much lighter note, we haven't gotten to this week, but I just wanted to put up Billy Andrade, the Rhode Island native, who's still playing some really good golf. A one-shot victory in the Boeing Classic this past weekend, and just goes to show that Rhode Island golf is still alive and well. Congratulations to Billy on that. Alrighty, provocative show today. Some good news and some bad news. Prayers to people in Virginia. My goodness. See you on the radio tomorrow at noon on WPRO, 3 o'clock. Back here tomorrow night.